Professor Pearl has this concept he calls Ziono-phobia.
Yes.
You're familiar with it?
Yes.
What do you think of this notion that people understand Islamophobia, but the concept of vilifying the Jewish state as on basis of its Zionism?
What I think is so insightful in using that phrase is it gets not only to the question of Islamophobia, but also it gets to the insanity behind current anti-Zionism and the new anti-Semitism. The form of obsession that we see, the disproportionate attacks, it really is a form of mania. And phobia has that element. Anti-Semitism in some ways has become such a neutral term, and Zionophobia has a kind of power and a passion that says this is really unacceptable. Zion, which has always been a source of dream and a source of positivity, is now being attacked in the most vicious sort of way by the people who have no right to speak because they don't establish democracies, they don't establish stable countries, they are addicted to terrorism and destruction. And that's really at the heart of the conversation.
We need the fighting word. And we lost all our fighting word. This is the only one remaining.
Right.
Okay.
So we need to resurrect it.
It's right to be very nice and universal.
Right.
And you contend that Zionism is a part of Judaism?
Zionism is a central part of Judaism.
A central part.
Shall I prove it to you?
Please.
Okay. Look at that. First commandment. Can you recite it? I am your Lord, your God.
And you shall have no others.
Out
Of
Egypt, from the house of bondage. Which means, if you forget history, you forget your identity. You forget me. Right?
The simplicity of a mathematician. You see that? Elegance.
And there's something I learned also. When Moses took Israel out of Egypt, right, they stopped him in Mount Sinai and said, hey, let's have a religion. But first they had a destination.
True.
We know where we are going. We are one people, and we have a destination to go to Eretz Israel, okay? You want a God? We'll stop at Mount Sinai and we'll have a God. Secondary. First come our peoplehood. Second comes our religion.
And Zionism is a core pillar of Judaism. So to oppose it, is that racism? To oppose Zionism?
From the Jewish side, to oppose Zionism is committing suicide on a collective level. Because the American Jewry and the Jewish as a people will not survive without Israel. Because we used to have a glue and we lost it. The glue was religion. Now we lost this glue, and the only glue that remains is Israel and its inspiration. Therefore, being anti-Zionism is committing a nice collective suicide. Knowingly. Oh, not sorry. Not true. Not true.
Not knowingly, and that's the ignorance.
That's a sad thing about it. That American Jews do not recognize that they are committing suicide.
And especially now when you have 6 million Jews living in one place. It's the world's largest Jewish community, soon to be 50% of the world's Jewish community. For you to say you're anti-Zionist is what? To say, first of all, that you don't believe the Jews are a people. You have no right to do that. We have the right to define ourselves. Second, that we don't have the right to exist. What about the 192 other countries in the United Nations? How come nobody asks them? And third is basically to endorse genocide and to say these people need to be wiped out. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing to give in.
We had a discussion last week, and the student, a nice Zionist student, she asked a deep question. She was herself worried about it, concerned with it. Why shouldn't Jews become minority in Israel? Tolerated minorities. And I bet we didn't give her enough ideological strength to answer it herself. She didn't get it in school. She didn't get it in Camp Ramah.
Right.
No.
Ask the Lebanese Christians how that worked out for them.
The ones in their new diaspora.
Right. And ask the Reform Jews in Germany how giving up on people had worked out for them. We have historical examples to teach us beyond the ideology, beyond the vision. We have history as our guide.
I enforce it with two facts, which makes sovereignty a sovereignty, and that's the right to bear arms and the right to control the border, right? And there's a third one, the right to be a custodian
Yeah.
for culture,
What's taught in the schools?
to use the tax money
Uh-huh.
to support and enrich the heritage of one group, not all, not all other groups. We don't spend as much budget in supporting the Islamic tradition and culture in Israel. It's true, we have discrimination because we say it's a Jewish state, where the Jews need at least one custodian for their culture.
Under all the rules of democracy, the majority has the right to determine what will be the majority culture in the public square. When I walk around the United States of America on December 24th and people say to me, "Happy holiday," you know what I say to them? "Merry Christmas."
Merry
Because I
Christmas.
know exactly what it is. It's Christmas, right? Sometimes, yeah, there was that one time where it was Christmaka, but no, it's Christmas. And I respect the right of the majority Christians here in the United States to express their culture in the public square, because indeed they're custodians. Where the distinction we have to make is that we do not therefore also have discrimination when it comes to political rights. And that's the mark of a democracy. A democracy doesn't annihilate its own culture, its own people's culture, but it celebrates its people's culture while also respecting every individual's right to speak up, to vote, to live freely, and to do their own culture, but not with the same kind of majoritarian push. And that's what goes on in England, and that's what goes on in France, and that's what goes on in the United States, and that's what goes on in Israel. Unfortunately, the first three countries have forgotten that. And they do it, but they apologize for it. And in Israel, we're still not apologizing for it, and that's why people don't like us.
Is there still an opportunity to reclaim the good name of Zionism in the face of so much?
This is what this conference is all about.
This conference, yes.
On campus,
For example, when you hear the term Zionism on campus, it's typically our enemies using it to be followed by the word criminals.
no, I'm using it to provoke our enemies.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you are. You are.
To ask me, really, you're a Zionist? Say, keep on talking, I like to hear.
Is there still time to reclaim the definition of that term?
I sleep well at night because I'm a historian. And while I see horrible things that have happened in Israel, in history, I also see wonderful things that have happened in history, starting with the creation of the State of Israel. Who would have imagined such a crazy thing? Who would have imagined also that the United States would be friends with the Germans and with the Japanese? So there's always a possibility. Also, David Ben-Gurion said you can't be a Zionist and a pessimist, and I'm a Zionist, therefore I can't be a pessimist. But more than that, I have to say, when I've traveled around last year, probably to 50 or 60 different cities throughout the world. I was in Warwick University in England.
In England.
And over 120 students showed up for a lecture about Zionism. Maybe 20 of them were Jewish, according to the Jewish students there. And they were really open to learning because all they knew was it was this thing that was being beaten up, and they asked good questions, they asked thoughtful questions, and they asked respectful questions. Everybody was really nervous. They had security and whatever. It was an amazing event because we talked about what this thing meant. And I think we haven't done a good enough job to kind of invite people in. We also obviously have a lot of people who are closed-minded and unwilling to hear, but there are a lot of people in the middle who just don't know. And we get so defensive and we get so traumatized that we don't really try to just speak to people and to build one-on-one relationships and also bigger educational initiatives, taking back the night. We're so busy apologizing, we're so busy being defensive, we're so busy dodging that I'm told, oh, don't use the Z word, it doesn't poll well. Right? Well, I'm going to take back the night. I learn from my feminist friends, I learn from my gay friends, I learn from my African American friends. I don't give in. I renegotiate, I reclaim, I rethink, but I also restore.
How do you, Bekitzur, describe what you feel people should know Zionism is?
First of all, I have a three-part definition. Zionism is the notion that we're a people, not just a religion. And that's why we have ties to a particular land, which is the second part. We have ties to a particular homeland, Eretz Israel. It doesn't preclude others having ties to that homeland, but we have ties to that land, and we don't give up those ties just because somebody else might make a claim. And third, we, like 192 other countries in the United Nations, have the right to establish a state on that homeland as a people and as a free people. And so Zionism is the fundamental notion that we are a people with the rights to a land, to establish a state. Am Yisrael, Eretz Israel, Medinat Yisrael.
The State of Israel.
The State of Israel.